So that's good. We are all fine, working from home. And well, I just want to say thank you to ProColombia, to Jude. We have been organizing this from the past week with the goal to bring you positive news about Colombia. I think it's a moment to talk about the positive things. And of course, Colombia is a fantastic and an amazing country that I think has a lot of tales to talk to say to the world. So, well, now Jeff and Carolina will turn off the videos, and I want to leave you with a good friend, somebody who has been working with me from a long time ago. He's a fantastic journalist. Richard McColl is an Anglo-Canadian journalist, author of the Michelin Guide to Colombia. He's the host of the radio show Colombia Calling, Mompox hotelier, by the way. He's right now in Mompox, so I'm very jealous because it's a beautiful place. And he will be leading the talk. We are amazing guests. We have fantastic people. We have Brian, who has a social project in Medellin. We have Gregorio, who's a musician. And well, Colombia has many rhythms and different kind of music. It's incredible, all the things that you can see here or hear here. And then we have Nicole, who is a guy in anthropology who have been working with us too for a long time ago, and she's a fantastic person. So I want to present you Richard McColl.
Thank you.
Hi, Richard. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you very much. A great pleasure to be here from sunny, hot Montpos, but I am in a privileged position to be in a large colonial house. Hopefully you can hear the tropical bird song around me, and it will transport you away to Colombia to maybe happier times. Anyway, this webinar, Music, Peace and Passion, has some very interesting invitees, as very interesting participants, and thank you to all of those who've made this possible. I will be moderating and chatting a little bit. If you have questions, please, for those attending, there's 28 of you, and I can recognize some of your names, so I'll know when you click off, and I'll be able to write you insulting messages later. But anyway, if you have questions, please put them in the text box and to whom you'd like to address the questions, and we'll try and have time at the end to go through as many as we possibly can. So again, we hope to have an interesting and an informed conversation here about Colombia. First of all, who am I? My name is Richard McColl. I've been here for 14 years. I guess principally right now during this pandemic, I'm a parent, principally, principal caregiver, 2 children, but I have 2 hotels in Montpos. Some of you know them. There's La Casa Maria, which opened in 2008. And we've been working very much closely with Guillermo since the very beginning. They're very popular. And we opened at the end of 2019, our top end place called San Rafael, which was making all the right noises and all the right waves, and now is a little bit empty, but that will change when it all opens up again. Yes, I'm a journalist. I wrote the Michelin Guide some years ago. I've worked on the Brat Guides ever since. I work as a foreign correspondent. Most recently, I'm a correspondent for Russia Today News here. I'm a mercenary for work. And at the moment, I'm doing the Colombia Inside and Out book for the Latin American Bureau, which of course delves more into the politics. And in my spare time, I'm finishing up my PhD thesis about industrializing Bogota around the area of Los Martires. So I got a few things on my plate, but today is all about this webinar. And so how I'm going to do it, how we'll do it is I will introduce the other participants one by one, and but due to logistics and quality of sound, the idea is that each person speak independently of the other in turn, so that there's no cutting off, and so that we can cover each of them in depth.
Well, before you start, Richard, just to say, well, I hope you enjoy this talk, and like Richard said, I will turn off my video so you can enjoy, the guest and Richard. Okay, so I will see you in the last part of the talk.
Thank you. I'd like to start with just a little reflection on travel and say that it requires simple stratagems of being humble and patient. And I think, of course, right now, this is more important than most. And at times it's solitary and anonymous, but it's always alert. And as we live through this issue right now, perhaps we need to remember these things. And travel is, you know, far more extensive than a Google map, which unfortunately we are condemned to looking at right now. The Google map is easily acceptable and accessible, but it's no way the same thing. We can all be geeks drumming on our keyboards, looking up places, but distance is no longer a problem. As soon as the borders are lifted and the restrictions are lifted, again, distance is no longer a problem. And once we lift these issues, or they are lifted, we'll find hospitality marvels and essential discovery once again. And the travel industry, and a sympathetic travel industry, will take off once again. So my three guests, after that little, let's say, rumination, we'll start with Brian Johnston and then go on to Nicole Lesmes and then to Gregorio Uribe. But we'll start with Brian Johnston, who's in Medellin at the moment. He's a chef, a world traveler, founder of Via Cocina Food Train. It's a project promoting sustainable health, nutrition, and employment opportunities in Medellin. He's originally from Toronto, a major world traveler, and well, it's a great pleasure to have him here on this webinar. So welcome in from Medellin, Brian.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
You're most welcome. What I'm curious about, Brian, is someone who's traveled and volunteered in so many countries. You've had the opportunity to really rub shoulders and get involved with local communities. It's not been superficial travel. You've been out there, I would say, displaying more empathy to gain a greater understanding of each country. So how is it that you decided, right, 2013, I'm staying in Medellin?
That's a good question. Well, to start, I guess I'd say that with my background, since about 2003, I've been working in international development as a volunteer. So it's been about 17 years now with no salary, which is kind of focused a lot of my time on, getting to learn the local population, staying with local families, learning the cuisine with them in about 25 different regions around the world while I was doing my international development work with different NGOs all over the place. I've traveled to about 70 different countries. And yes, eventually you got to choose a place where you want to settle down if you want to do your own thing. I'd kind of done enough work through different NGOs that I was ready to start my own life project. And that's what I've done here with Via Cocina in Medellin. Some of the reasons I chose Colombia, first of all, at the time in 2003, it still wasn't that open that everybody was like, oh, it's a hot spot, Colombia, let's go there. But I had a lot of friends that were well-traveled that were recommending Medellin to check it out. Part of it is the weather, obviously. It's great weather all year round. But particularly for me, working in international development and working with food, with the focus of the project being on teaching people how to kind of transform the local produce into quality products where they can kind of earn a living and have something unique in the market. Medellin has a lot of opportunity. First, the vegetables, the fruits are extremely affordable here. They're available all year round. When I looked at some other places like Brazil and some other countries, it's just the local ingredients were too expensive a lot of times for people to be able to just buy them in the local market and transform them into different types of food. Here, that's not a problem at all. Apart from the food, the water is drinkable. You can just take it right out of the tap, which I couldn't do when I was in El Salvador, for example. And that creates a lot of challenges when you've got to buy water by the gallon. And then on the political side, the same year in 2003 when I was coming, the city was winning its first award, 2013, sorry. It was winning its first awards for innovation around the world. But at the same time, the UN was naming Medellin the city with the largest rich-poor gap in all of Latin America. And so I came to do a diagnostic a year before I moved here, and I saw that although there were lots of opportunities with different organizations within the country, a lot of them still had pretty rigorous processes to apply for them. And the number of people that want to participate, even in projects that are available for low-income participants, there's much more demand than there is availability. And so I saw the opportunity and the willingness of people to try and learn new things, and a lot of people that are motivated to do things different. And I just saw this was a great place for me to kind of fit into the community, take my background in international development, my background in cuisine, and mix the two of them to participate and become part of the community and help people move forward.
That's very upbeat there, very upbeat intervention there from you, Brian. And of course, fantastic that you should choose a place in Colombia after all of the places that you've been. And of course, I'm sure you have elements of each place that have definitely stuck with you. And I've noticed on the website all of the different cuisines that you teach. Mm-hmm. But one thing I'm interested in is how you go about choosing, or do you interview the people for your classes and for this opportunity, this mentoring? How is it that these people come to you? One of the great advantages of Colombia, and indeed Medellin, perhaps Medellin more so, is the resourcefulness and the desire of the local people to improve, let's say. And that's why I think Medellin has won so many awards. And of course, why the urban regeneration has really taken a foot there. So, I mean, how is it that you get your participants then for these projects?
That's a really good set of questions. First of all, I think one thing that's important is that when I started my project, I was able to secure some funding for my pilot project a few years ago, and that helped us to get started. But after that, I've been working individually. I have my team of volunteers and participants that work with me that have come through the project and continue to work with us after years. And that allows me more flexibility in the sense that I don't have any government or NGO that's kind of overhead saying we want these quantitative indicators fulfilled with a certain number of people coming through all the time. So I'm able to basically deal with the people that approach us on a very personalized level, and I can go for quality more than quantity. So for me, I'm not really worried if I have 3 people or 300 people coming through in a year. The most important thing is that they're motivated. And the way that we started, the pilot project was based on the mentoring project, getting people learning how to do almost little micro franchises with different foods that I've learned around the world that we've adapted to the local flavor, local materials that are available, so people can kind of, if you've got a food cart that's selling fried foods right now, you can kind of adapt the fryer into boiling and making fresh pastas, for example, or instead of frying chicken wings, you can grill them. All different types of stuff with flavors, with sauces that are full of healthy vegetables and fruits that are from all over the world, and people don't see they're eating more fruits and vegetables, but they like the flavor, and so they're getting the nutrients kind of hidden in there like you do with your baby, for example. As far as the participants, when we started that pilot project, after a little while, I started getting knocks on the door because we were on television a few times in different media resources. People started ringing the doorbell saying, I want to learn with you, but I don't just want to start a business. I want to cook healthier for my family. And so at that point, we kind of listened to what people were saying, and we were still working on finishing the construction of the house. I'm still 5 years strong, and hopefully this year we'll finish it. We should have been finished by now before the pandemic started, but at the same time, although we don't have funds coming in, it does give us time to finish all those administrative things in the construction so that when things do open again, hopefully in September, we're able to be 100% ready and fully operative to receive everybody. So what we've been able to do is focus during the construction on community classes and promoting them through social networks, to allow us to connect with people. They hear it word of mouth, or they see it in a social network, in local newspapers, and they tell their friends about it, and just kind of grows from there. We've got over 200 people right now that are on our list of participants with the community classes. And then once people are here, they hear about us and they say, okay, I'm actually interested in doing something with a business. Then we go through an interview process that's personalized as well. It starts out maybe just talking with them, talking about what they're doing right now, if they have a food business or not, what they're interested in doing in the future. Then I go to their home. We look, instead of doing things in theory in the beginning, we go to the actual home, we look at their actual bills. We talk about their reality. How much comes in a month, how much goes out in a month, what's the difference, and how we can try to bridge that gap. And a lot of times when we start doing the accounting, we say there's more costs in a month than what's coming in. And we try and figure out exactly how we could help them to be able to bridge that gap in the current times, and then help them create their own objectives for the future and create a system where they can work with us to reach those goals. And that's where tourism with Colombian Journeys principally is our big partner, where we look at the tourists that are coming in and we make sure that they understand how the project is working. When they do a tour with us, they learn how their funds are going directly into the project. I still work as a volunteer with no salary, and everything is reinverted into the project, reinvested so that it goes directly to creating the spaces where the participants can use to sell their food. They've got spaces here where they can work without paying rent. And it also subsidizes the classes in the community project so that people in low-income neighborhoods, they can afford to come when they can't afford to pay what the cost of the actual class is. I actually lose money per person if I was actually paying for it myself. But thanks to tourism, we're able to subsidize those classes and make ends meet.
Yeah, phenomenal. You've definitely gone more Colombia, because there's some Spanglish in your English there.
Yeah,
I think we've all done that one at one point or another. But amazingly altruistic project that you've got going on there. You've no income whatsoever. Is the house that you're building for these classes, where is it located? I mean, is it because Colombia is very obviously stratified between different social levels, and of course your classes appeal to, I think they would cross all boundaries of social strata. So where is the house?
That's a good question. That was an important consideration for me. I was looking for a house for over 2 years before I found a place that I could purchase an old house that, unfortunately, I didn't find an old colonial house like what you've got there, where I could just kind of transform the spaces as they were into the home. I had to demolish an old house and rebuild it. But what I did is they were building the modern tram in the city at the same time. And so I went to a lot of the old homes that were being demolished, and I bought the old doors, the old windows, and I added those to the structure here and built something that looks like it's old and colonial, but it's actually a new home, and that's kind of retained a lot of the heritage from the neighborhood within it. And we're right next to the modern tram station, Miraflores, in the city. It's a 15-minute walk to the city center. It's a strato 3, so it's right in the middle. It gives me safety. It also makes the cost for the electricity and the water and everything a little bit lower. It's in the neighborhood where people can get here easily from any neighborhood in the city, whether it's a low-income neighborhood where they come through the metro cable, or they come on the tram, or they come walking from local neighborhoods, or if people are coming from Poblado, from some of the other activities that we do to raise money, you can get here from 25 minutes in any of the higher stratus neighborhoods within the city as well. So it's very strategically located. There's a lot of, this neighborhood is renovation zone, so there's lots of projects from the government where they're renovating the zone. There's a big park next to us. There's the garden up on the top of the mountain that you can get through the metro cable. They're supposed to build a park next to us in front of the house in the future. There's a Zona Rosa next to us where people go out and see the nightlife in a normal neighborhood as opposed to in a more fancy neighborhood, but everybody's super friendly, it's safe. So there's lots of stuff happening here, and I'm really happy to be here.
Nice overview of Medellin, because you're taking advantage of and clearly benefiting from the renovation and the urban regeneration that's taken place, definitely through the public transport system, the tram system, the work on parks. If we can wind our conversation down with you, but I'm sure our listeners, and there's a bunch of them out there, are interested in perhaps a couple of anecdotes from your classes, perhaps of maybe interesting individuals who signed up. Have you had anyone who's, you've been like, oh God, this person, I'm a bit worried for my security? Or have you had someone else, or, you know, has the mayor come in and said, I want to learn how to do, you know, Canadian chicken wings? I mean, what are the most sort of interesting, or can you talk about a couple of people that have come in?
Luckily, I haven't had any problems as far as security. We do follow all the hygiene stuff that has to be done, as well as the new protocols with biosecurity and all of this stuff with COVID. But I mean, we've had some requests for kids, for example, and I've actually had a class where we had 3 or 4 different people come into the same class, and they were cutting with the knives with their babies strapped in front of them in the classroom. So they weren't in front of the burners cooking, obviously. But that was a little nervous for me the first time. I've done it 2 or 3 times since, and it gets a little bit easier every time. But having people from all different ages, little kids, where we've had one family, for example, where, you know, they've got a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. The 3-year-old wants all the attention, so she's there crying and doesn't want to let her brother and sister do any of the work in the class. She wants to have her hands on everything. So you kind of have to sit back and kind of find the barrier where, okay, I'm leading the class, but as well I've got to give the space to the parents and let them discipline the children or take care of them, because I can't really enter in there. So it's kind of a situation where you learn how to be hands off and hands on at the same time. As far as I haven't had any super famous people from the government or anything like that come through yet. I've had some people come through and say they wanted to do some activities with their organizations, for example. We do kind of a team building activities to help them learn to work as a team by dividing them up into different groups and having them cook together and all share parts of different recipes so they can see where their part of it is crucial, but they wouldn't be able to finish that meal or that activity without the help of the others on the team. So we kind of look at developing things differently depending on what people are interested in doing, as well as just individuals that come as a couple and they want to have a romantic evening or dinner, and we shut down the whole house and it's exclusive just for them. So we're extremely flexible. We enjoy working with people that are creative, people whether they've got challenges, physical disabilities. We have a ramp in front of the house to get inside. We make it as accessible as possible as well. Really, the idea is anybody that comes here and they have an idea, we do our best to make it work with them, and we're happy to receive everybody whenever they can come and see us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Listen, let me take this moment to say thank you. Thank you, Brian Johnston, for coming on and for participating and giving us a really quite in-depth overview of what you're doing and how you're putting back into the community through tourism, the drip down industry, and of course, hopefully, you know, improving diet as well, and nutrition, which is important, of course. And, you know, I think economically so, and supporting local producers, which of course is going to be even more important as we, you know, continue through this pandemic. And I wish you all the best for the future. I know things are going to be great and you're going to get the funds needed to continue, especially through Colombian Journeys. But if anyone has questions for Brian directly, please type them into the text box, and of course we'll address them at the end because he'll still be here listening. So thank you again, Brian Johnston, for your time. It's really interesting. I had no idea about your project there in Medellin, and now, of course, I know. We're going to move on and move to Nicole Lesmes, who's in Bogota. So from Medellin to Bogota. Hi, Nicole. Nicole is our academic on the show, and she's going to be talking about perhaps some more, you know, I would say maybe more politically sensitive issues and topics here as we discuss. It's a great pleasure to have Nicole. She's got her MSc from the London School of Economics. She's been drinking coffee from a Beatles mug, so I'm always happy about that. So therefore, she's bridging the gap between ProColombia London and us here in Colombia. She's an anthropologist, gender studies, and of course, peace. And so, listen, you work as a guide as well, Nicole. So how is it that you blend your studies? I can understand anthropology, but the gender studies and, of course, let's say, conflict or peace, as we in the post-accord situation in which we're living, and pandemic. How is it you bring those topics into guiding, and when you bring people to Bogota or around?
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for this invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to be here representing the tour guides of Colombia. First of all, we are ambassadors of our countries. We are the first page that people read when they get to Colombia. So we have to do our best effort possible. As you said before, I'm an anthropologist. We specialize in cultural differences. And as a tour guide also, I always try to intersect many of these topics from the professional perspective, from the anthropology, and from gender conflict and peace building. Is everything interconnected? So yes, basically that's the answer. Is we as a tour guide, we have the responsibility to perform multiple professions at the same time. Sometimes you have to be a historian, sometimes you have to be an expert in tax and currency, and sometimes you have to be a therapist. So that's what I love my job, because we have to do multiple professions at the same time, and everything is interconnected at the same time.
The interconnection is so true. I mean, for a long time, and I occasionally accompany groups or individuals in Bogota, sometimes in other places, but it's really interesting how there's an evolution of questions and an evolution of interest. For a long time, we were pretty much, it was insisted that we talk about the beauty of Colombia, the birds, the strengths. But people also come because of the wholly justified and unjustified reputation that Colombia has. It's the duplicitous nature of tourism here. I don't want to say disaster tourism or anything, because it's not, but it's about learning about a culture, a society, an economy, and so on. So for you, in your experience, what do you find that most people end up asking you about? What's a current theme? Because of course, they're getting you as a guide because of your background. They've obviously seen who you are and say, well, this person, they'll be able to answer my question. So what do you normally find yourself answering?
Well, people are coming to Colombia for different reasons, mainly because they are interested in history, they are interested in the gastronomy, culture, traditions, community. But I have to say that a remarkable transformation it's going on since the sign of the peace agreement in 2016, which definitely is a important point in the Colombian history. Before, people used to come to Colombia because some series on Netflix, for example, Narcos, we used to have a really bad reputation, as you say, linked with narco traffic, cartel drugs, Pablo Escobar, prostitution, so on and so forth. But lately, with the signing of the peace agreement, people are more interested in the new history, the new chapter that we are writing. They are coming because the new projects that we are creating related to the reconstruction of our society after the armed conflict, after more than 60 years of armed conflict, they are coming because they are interested to see these community projects, as Brian said before, all these strategies that people are trying to do to do a different activity that is embedded in a legal framework. So yes, they also come for the art production in Colombia, and we have so many activities to offer for everybody, but I have to say that the political situation right now in Colombia is very important. And all over the world, our people are coming more frequently to know this switch in history.
Yeah, you know what, I enjoy it because it shows an engaged visitor to Colombia. Going beyond the obvious questions and actually asking, as you say, this new chapter since October 2016, you know, that chapter has been opened, and one has to explain it. One has to explain from the very beginning, as you say, the 60 years of conflict, and then 2016, how it evolved to that point, and then on. Now, you have a great deal of experience, of course, with ex-combatants and projects with ex-combatants. And I'm interested in knowing what, in your experience, what do they think? And in particular, let's say women ex-combatants, what do they think? I mean, I'm sure in the zones of transition or reintegration or whatever they're now called, because the acronyms change every sort of few months.
That's right.
But what is their position now regarding the peace accords and, of course, potential for tourism with them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I see tourism as a very key policy tool for the social transformation of Colombia. Absolutely. During my field work in Colombia, because as an anthropologist, I have done some field work. I have worked with some female ex-combatants of the guerrillas. For people who don't know who the guerrillas are, the FARC is the largest, or used to be the largest guerrilla in South America. They were fighting over 60 years in Colombia. And we have more than 10 million victims of the armed conflict. And the members of this guerrilla group were male and female, but for some reason, the female identity has been invisible for so long. And what I have trying to do is to make more visible the role of women, not just during the armed conflict, but during the reintegration process, and how these women can actually empower themselves doing some activities linked with tourism. We have some very interesting projects of women that have found in the tourism an economic activity to go ahead with their lives. For example, I know a woman who has a restaurant in the city center of Bogota. She used to be an ex-combatant, but now thanks to the tourism, she has found a way of living into the legality framework. I know so many projects and strategies that are trying to link art production, especially street art production, with the memory, with the construction of memory of Colombia around the armed conflict, which I think is a fundamental part of our history. So you can see how the tourism has brought a lot of opportunities, not just for the victims of armed conflict, but also for the perpetrators of violence who are trying to find a new life into the civilian society, if I will say that. Mm-hmm.
You touched on something there which is of great interest to me, and it's the concept of memory. When we talk about memory, you know, even prior to, let's say, the conflict, the 60 years, in Colombia, so much has been erased because of the conflict. And now Colombians themselves appear to forget that there's something before the conflict, and that has I will say, you know, as someone living here in Colombia, I'm very aware that I'm a visitor here, despite living here and a bit resident. But how do we, and you're an anthropologist, how do we then, let's say, how do we recall and how do we protect this memory that has been erased? Because everything now, it's always conflict, but there's so much more, and culturally and as a society, there's so much more in Colombia. So how would you say to our Colombian listeners, and then therefore to our international listeners and viewers here, how is it that we can reconnect with the past, the culture that has been erased by the conflict?
Well, that's a really good question, Rich. And the first thing that I have to say is that the last 60 years of the Colombian history has been very painful for many of us. We have had massive violations of human rights. We have had a lot of victims of forced displacement, of persecution, so on and so forth. And it's not a secret that for many of us, the easiest way to get out of these problems is just to forget about it. As you said, is erase this kind of history. But we are very aware that it's important to keep alive this memory because it's part of our history. But we have to acknowledge that this conflict happened in order to learn about it and in order to learn new things and different ways to do things, I think. So we have a lot of projects going around Colombia. For example, in Bogota, we have the construction of the Center for Historic Memory, which is trying to make alive, it's trying to make alive the memory of the victims of the conflict, but also we are trying to do more artistic performances around the memory of the armed conflict. For example, if you go to the National Museum in Bogota, you will find many performances. Well, we used to have, but now with the pandemic, of course, it's closed, but we used to have really good initiatives of anthropologists, historians, sociologists, in order to keep alive the memory of our country. Of course, a lot of visitors, a lot of travelers are very keen on learning what was happening in the past and how Colombia is a resilient country that is learning from its past and is also trying to write, as I said before, a new chapter of the history. We're trying to be very positive. We are trying to be very optimistic. And I think we have learned the lesson. The conflict, the violence is never the solution. We are trying to find new ways to make this country better.
Definitely. Hopefully we're all working, and I know we're all working towards this goal. And what you were indicating there is that tourism, and of course this experience, is one of, through the art, through the music, through the display, is one of reconciliation. And of course this is one of the biggest hurdles, but as a resilient nation, reconciliation is something that's very accessible indeed. I always ask these kinds of questions, but of the people you know who've been reintegrated back into society, can you share any anecdotes about some of these people, where they came from, how they ended up in a guerrilla group, and now what they're doing? Obviously no names, but...
Exactly, because we have basically to keep the confidentiality of their names and their histories, because it could be risky for them. But I have worked mainly with women, and many of them ended up into the guerrillas group because they were living in regions of Colombia where the presence of the state was not there, basically, where the absence of the state was the key fact for guerrilla groups, armed groups, to recruit these children when they are very young. So many of these women ended up in these groups because they didn't have another option. There are so many regions of Colombia, especially in the south areas, in the Pacific coast, where there is no presence of the state. There is no political or even the public forces are present. So the only option that they used to have before was just, or you join the armed group, paramilitary group, or the guerrilla group, or there is no other way of living. So they ended up, for that reason, when you analyze their history of life, they didn't have any kind of education, they didn't have any kind of political participation, they were voiceless in their communities. So these women felt that the only way to empower themselves and to show the society that they were valuable human beings, that they could perform different activities than being mothers or being just, housekeepers, was to join these armed groups. And that's the way that they felt empowered by being into these groups. Of course, the history inside the group is another story, it's a different chapter. Sometimes it's very sad. Again, we have gender-based violence, we have unequal distribution of labor, so on and so forth. But what you see right now is the hope of these women. They are resilient women because they are trying to find, despite their history, there's difficult history, they're trying to find new ways to start. They are trying to find new jobs. They are trying to learn new skills in order to be useful and productive for this society. And I think that's a remarkable thing after all these 60 years of armed conflict.
Amazing. One personal question from here in Montpos. If I was looking for someone who was reintegrating in this region and maybe looking to hopefully employ someone, how would I go about it?
I can text you on private.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Richard. Thank you so much.
We've been talking to Nicole Lesmes, who's given us an incredible background on what she's doing and how she guides. And I know now many of you out there listening and watching, this will be of interest to a lot of your clients. So we'll be driving more people to Nicole and making her too busy to do her academic research there here in Bogota. But really interesting, very upbeat again, but a reality of the resilience needed to drive towards reconciliation here in Colombia. If you have, again, questions for Nicole, please put it in the text box and we will address them at the end. So Nicole will still be here. We're going to move on now to musician Gregorio Uribe. He's a singer-songwriter. He's in New York right now, expecting the imminent arrival of his firstborn son. So if he has to, you know, skip out in a heartbeat, it's because something quite groundbreaking, let's say earth-shattering is happening, an event. Look at that, there's musical instruments in the background. Gregorio has been named one of the 100 most successful Colombians overseas. So he's there with his volteado and his guitars. Welcome on this webinar, Gregorio.
Awesome, Richard. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's awesome to be able to also get to hear Nicole and Brian. Very interesting stuff. So I'm also here to learn.
No, it's really special to be able to connect and hear what other people, you've heard someone from Toronto based in Medellin, someone in Bogota who studied in London. I mean, you know, when I bring it into your sphere, the music sphere, you are obviously, you know, very much influenced by music of Colombia and the big band. And I love that I was listening this morning in preparation. I will admit to a little bit embarrassingly that I don't know a lot of your music, but I listened this morning and I was like, look at that, Ruben Blades, look at that, Carlos Vives, mentioned in the New York Times. You're a big deal, Gregorio. I mean, this is...
No, that's all, you know, that's just los adornos, you know. It's just, I think you're only as good as your last work, right?
Very good, very good. But you're a singer-songwriter, and I said, you know, you've got stuff that you've written things like Viva Colombia, you know, it's all about a recollection of your country. But you don't pull any punches. You bring in the reality of your country, and you're bringing in also a hope. But what I love, and what's most interesting to me, is that when you mix Chandé with funk. Now I'm here in Montpos, and one of the groups here played at my wedding so many years ago, and of course they're Mapalé, Cumbia, Chandé. Perhaps you could tell our listeners about Chandé, because you're a Bogotano, right? I mean, Chandé is not from your region.
Not at all. Wait, by any chance, was the band that played with you, was it Don Abundio?
Don Abundio is my friend.
It's amazing. Well, we're going to actually be talking about him today because he's part of what we do in the tour. He's just such a fabulous character. Well, as you're saying, and for those who might not be too familiar with this, obviously, well, Colombia being a country of regions, you both geographically, historically, culturally, you know, me being from Bogota, being a cachaco or a rolo, I'm not supposed to be able to know how to dance any Caribbean rhythms or know even how to play them. But I think that there's a few factors. I think I am also part of a generation that has sort of tried to recapture or reconnect with, you know, traditional music, traditional rhythms, a way of sort of reconciling with history in a way. And also there's also more commercial phenomenons like the Carlos Vives phenomenon, who's, you know, an artist who's from the Caribbean coast and brings those rhythms from that area to the interior, to the rest of the country, and, you know, mixes it, does like the crossover. So even though I'm from Bogota, I was raised with that sort of Carlos Vives sound. So we were already starting to feel like Colombia as a whole, let's say. But then there's like different stages of why I've connected so much with music. And part of it is the fact that I think, half of my life I've spent sort of outside of Colombia. And that in a way I've learned, sometimes you could say that I've learned more about Colombian music outside of Colombia even. Just because, you know, there's that fire that ignites of you really want to connect with your country. That happened both when I was in college studying music, or also, for example, where I learned to play vallenato accordion. That was actually in Australia. So it's like I've had like a 1 foot here and 1 foot there. So I've kind of always been outside, but also always trying to connect.
Mm-hmm. Very good indeed. Very well. That's it, isn't it? As a cachaco, as a rolo, as someone from Bogota, but you are bridging something which I found to be so very challenging here in Colombia, is the regionalism of the country. You're a cachaco, you can't play vallenato, you can't play chandé, but why not? It's the same country, you have the same blood, you have the same rhythm. And you mentioned Carlos Vives, I know he's a costeño, but got explained to me once that he is vallenato in an Armani suit. You know, it's it's very polished. But I mean, how is you get a great reception for your music, and you've played, you know, Radio City Hall and so on. It's not just to a Latino crowd. You get, you know, fans from all over the world. Tell us a little bit about your reception.
Guys, well, I honestly I haven't done Radio City yet. I think you mean that I got a chance to do Carnegie Hall though. So
oh wow, well that's what I meant.
I'm not complaining. I just want to put it on the record because otherwise they say, why are you playing them? Anyway, well, I think part of that has been the fact of, you know, being in and living and playing and making music in New York, you know, a place where obviously you're getting to meet people from all corners of the world. That has made it very special because, for example, when with my big band, with my orchestra, when we used to have a residency, which means that we were playing once a month in a specific place, in a jazz club, at Zinc Bar. It was awesome because we were playing all these sort of Colombian infused rhythms, but to an audience that, again, one person might be from Morocco, one person might be from France, from India, from Canada, from wherever, because, you know, you're in that epicenter. So that made it very special because that would kind of help me in what always was my I guess my goal was to make this music inclusive. And probably the reason why I was always aiming for that was because, as you said, I always, in a way, also felt as an outsider to the music. So I'm like, just as I want to be welcome in this space, I also want to welcome people. And I also have tried to find ways to make it my own, in the sense that I don't want to be maybe a bad replica of traditional music. I guess I want to be inspired in that music and then do my own thing or my own songs or sing about my own experiences. And another thing is that also with the musicians that I was playing, for example, in the big band, although we were playing mainly Colombian rhythms, most of, you know, there were only 2 Colombians out of 16. You know, the drummer was a girl from Mexico. There's the clarinet players from Switzerland. Again, folks from Quebec, from all over the place. So that always forced me to find what we have in common, like the common denominator, I guess.
Very nice indeed. So tell us a little bit about the history of some of the music that you're involved in. I mean, of course, we've talked about, and people might not know, Barranquilla, of course, is the melting pot for all of the, let's say, African infused music that comes down the Magdalena River where I am now. But you're taking Vallenato, which is Cesar, that department, a bit of the Guajira, and into obviously Bolivar. But then you're mixing it with the Chandé again, where I'm sitting right now. But you fuse it with funk, of course, and you fuse it with you know, jazz rhythms. So tell us a little bit more about the you know, some of the history of this music.
Well, let's see. I mean, to put it, I guess, in general terms, I'd say that most Colombian music that you find, or most type of rhythms that you find, usually have different elements. Maybe some might be from an indigenous culture, some might be from an African heritage, and some from a European. So if I just, you know, just use one particular to serve an example, we have gaita music. I actually have a gaita right here.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is you know, these beautiful flutes. They're played in pairs, and these are originally from are of indigenous origins, or various indigenous groups that would have flutes like this in the Caribbean coast of Colombia. Originally, one of the names was Cuisi, and then, you know, the Europeans named them gaitas after what they had basically seen at home. And this type of ensemble that plays gaita, so you have basically this indigenous flute, you have the African drums, or Afro-Colombian drums, where, you know, bringing the African heritage. They're played together. For example, what happens is that in a city like Cartagena, being one of the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, maybe at some point the biggest slave port in South America, a lot of the maroon slaves that fled the crown, they would go into the Montes de Maria. They sort of found these natural barriers like cienagas and manglares, and they fled the Spanish crown. And in some of the places where they fled to, there were indigenous communities. So there's where that sort of a mixture of culture starts happening. And then later in gaita music, when they are singing, they're singing in Spanish. So that's an example where you have maybe like those three main pillars together. Again, and I think that happens with most of them. With vallenato, you have the accordion that I got here, the accordion being, you know, the European sort of influence. You have the guacharaca, also part of our African heritage. So in each one of them, there's like a little element that can be part of different mixtures. And I think that the history, it's never easy, especially the older the music, is never easy to pinpoint. The music was born here in this town specifically, because, you know, the records are there's not that many records, and obviously there were not recordings, you know, 200 years ago. But I think they all really have to do with this sort of integration of different elements that start occurring. So I do like to always kind of celebrate that most of these music are always like mestizo musics in a way. They'll have elements of maybe those three main cultures that we have. And as you were saying, you know, talking about the Magdalena, you could maybe do a comparison with the Magdalena and the Mississippi Delta, perhaps, right? Of having that, you know, a place where there's a lot of commerce and the Caribbean is moving around. Some people would say that the accordion that arrives in Colombia might have been arrived coming from Dominican Republic, first, so from the island of Hispaniola originally. Or I have there's an instrument called the marimbula that comes from Cuba and came to Palenque actually not that a long time ago. So it's always moving. It's never as black and white. So we're always, people are asking me about that when we do the tours and everything. It's like it takes kind of like a week of ask here, ask this person, and you'll get different answers. And some people will call one rhythm in this town differently than from this one. So you just kind of have to like keep an open mind and not have to find like a black and white answer for anything in music.
Wonderful. But you mentioned Palenque, which of course is of great interest to myself, and I know a lot of people. Palenque is the first sort of freed African slave town. I don't know if it's in the Americas, but certainly in Colombia. What is your recollection and your experience of Palenque and the drumming and the music there? Because it opens a whole new avenue to the selection and variety of music in Colombia.
I think Palenque is maybe the flagship. I think, if that would be the correct term, like the flagship for Afro-Colombia in the Caribbean. But I also think it's important to know that Palenque is one of the many Palenques that I believe existed. So from my understanding, as I was mentioning, these are towns that are founded by Maroons that fled the Spanish crown. And so many of the towns surrounding Palenque, perhaps like Malagana or Maria la Baja or Palenquito, they were also, I guess, considered Palenques. But Palenque somehow has also been able to keep some of its traditions even more pristine, perhaps, or more uniquely. For example, the fact that they have a dialect. And that's something very special, you know, for a Colombian that goes for the first time to Palenque. Like, am I in a different country? You know, there's a whole dialect that mixes Bantu language with Spanish. So they could be speaking, and I won't understand. I mean, now there's a few words that here and there I can pick up, but so that's very fascinating. And I think it really has kind of served as a town to promote music and culture and different traditions. But I also like to find that balance of saying that it's one of the many places that provide this music. So they have been kind of more in the face of tourism, maybe using so they're almost like more conscious of this sort of more, I don't want to say marketing, but of showing themselves and presenting themselves to the world. For example, as you know, they like to call themselves the first free town of the Americas, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's not entirely like historically factual, but it's still okay, because it's you know, what they're promoting is this idea of freedom and of conserving their own heritage. So I think it's one of the most special places to visit. The people are wonderful. I've spent actually I've been there for numerous times and staying for a long while, and I've had a great time. And I've also recorded there. There's an album that I'm doing with other collaborators we're in Palenque. There's actually a small recording studio, And we brought people from different parts of the region, and we recorded an album there. So it's been awesome to collaborate with like the actual maestros from the area.
Amazing. When will we be able to get our hands on that?
Well, that one is gonna take a minute because at least it happens with me. There's always a few like I haven't even released the album that I've already finished right now that I'm kind of releasing by singles. So that one is probably might be a year or two in front. So it'll take a minute, and we're still kind of working in between Colombia, New York, you know, through Zoom.
We'll be looking out for it, and I know we can download and stream your music on SoundCloud. So just look up Gregorio Uribe there, and we can find it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being able to share with us some insights and the reconnection, let's say, of some of the traditional music and mixing it on an international stage. All three of our participants and our guests have been quite remarkable and are quite remarkable ambassadors for Colombia. On a final note here, I'd like to just say about travel that it should be about looking deeper at the world at large and into oneself. It's obvious that the study of the material culture of a place reveals subtleties in the history of its people. And that's one of the reasons we travel. And this experience of meeting and understanding a culture will spur a more sensitive type of travel and true discovery. And I think that's something that we need to consider now in this period for future travel. And of course, to the other participants, please stay safe, heed the warnings. All of the people out there listening, please stay safe. We will get through this together. I'm going to stop talking because you've all heard enough from me and hand it over to Guillermo. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, no, thank you very much to you, Richard. Really, it was a fantastic conversation. And well, I want to invite Brian and Nicole so to turn on the video. Something that maybe you didn't mention, Richard, but with Gregorio, we have a fantastic experience in the coast. It's called Sounds of Colombia. So I don't know if you want to say just some details about this experience that we have with you in the coast.
Absolutely, I will. Yeah. Well, as you know, as everybody who's here, I'm also passionate about travel. So what happened is that my own research of traditional Colombian rhythms led me to travel to these different communities and meet wonderful people, wonderful locals. So eventually I figured that I wanted others to have those experiences. So we ended up teaming up with Impulse Travel. And what we did was we created Sounds of Colombia. And it's a wonderful tour where we travel the Caribbean coast. And every day we are working with a different local artist that knows about a specific type of rhythm. And this is not for musicians that have to travel, this is for anyone, because music is really the bridge to meet and enjoy a good time with the community. So we're learning one day about vallenato in Cartagena, and cumbia, and accordion, and música sabanera. We're learning about porro, also the brass bands. When we go to Monpós, hopefully we'll see Richard there next time, and we learn about chandé, as he was saying, and berroche, and tambora, and the los ritmos del río, basically the rhythms of the river. And so every day that we're experiencing, we're getting, and the idea is to do this as much as possible in the houses of these local artists, so we can also meet their family, know about their history. So I welcome everybody to go. Maybe I'll put in the chat the link for Sounds of Colombia. You'll see a 2-minute video where you get a glimpse of this wonderful experience where we're one-on-one with the actual, with the real connoisseurs of this music, from 86 years old to 17. It doesn't matter the age, champeta, whatever it is. Every day, one different type of music, and it's, to me, the best way to get to know Colombia.
Well, thank you, Gregorio. Yeah, it's a fantastic experience. And during your conversation, you know, Richard, with all these amazing guests, I was thinking that, you know, during these 3 months of pandemic, you know, we have been working with the companies trying to survive and you know, and looking different webinars and the future and the trends, etc. But then with this conversation, my conclusion is that tourism is a fantastic business. It's amazing, all the things, and Colombia has so much things to tell. You know, there's a lot of I think, you know, I don't know if this is the way to say it, but I think Colombia is a storytelling country, really. There is a lot of things to say about Colombia, difference about peace, about food, gastronomy, social projects. So, and all these fantastic people is doing this. So I just want to say thank you to Nicole, to Gregorio, to Brian for your passion. And of course, Richard, you always are with me with all these ideas. And thank you very much for your support. And I hope so, you know, all the people who were with us during this hour enjoy it. And anything you need, just let us know. Send us email if you want more information about them. And well, I wish you all the best, Juan. I hope I can see you soon. And well, thank you very much, Nicole, Gregorio, and Brian.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Hope to see everybody in Colombia very soon. Thank you, Richard. Guillermo, gracias.
Yes, a la orden. Bueno, chao a todos, and thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye-bye. Cheers.